So there are plenty of mysteries around the Zeta Halo ring, some that we know that will be answered within the future DLC, others we can find answers to within audio logs, but there are still plenty of things that are a complete mystery to us at the moment. One of those mysteries that I just can't get my head around is that crashed Guardian in the background on Zeta Halo that everyone can see just by glancing over. This was even teased in some of the trailers before the game had even released, so it does get you thinking, why was this pointed out so early and what does this have to do with Infinite? Now, there are many possibilities as to how this Guardian was downed, crashed or destroyed, and today we're going to detail all of them as much as we can, whilst also providing a little more lore around what a Guardian is, for those that don't really know, and their purpose in the Halo universe. Hopefully this video will give you the foundation to form your own opinions on what you think happened to this Guardian and why it was downed on the Zeta Halo ring. And also towards the end of the video I'll be giving my theory on what I think happened to this Guardian and why it was downed or crash landed. If you guys do go on to enjoy this video, do consider dropping it a like and subscribing for more content coming every single day to the channel. Without further ado, let's get straight into it. So to begin with, I'm going to go and give you a little bit of history around the Guardians in general, what their real purpose is in the universe of Halo, and why they're so significant. Now, make sure you guys go check the timestamps in the description to skip to whichever part of the video that you would like to, and again, they just go into detail around each part that we do discuss in this video. The Guardians were developed and created by the Forerunners to enforce the mantle of responsibility by keeping the lesser systems in line. The constructs were first deployed many millennia prior to the Forerunner Flood War, created by the Forerunners before the time of the Ecumene, as tenders and records of the Precursor's legacy. However, this purpose has long since passed out of living memory. Throughout Forerunner history, Guardians quelled rebellions and neutralized threats. During the Forerunners' war with the Flood, Guardians were used in an attempt to combat the Flood but proved useless against their biological parasite. Whilst the Guardians' weapons proved devastating against fleets of the lesser species, they were no match against the Forerunner warships captured by the Flood. As the Flood brought the fall of the Ecumene and the near extinction of the Forerunners themselves, the Forerunners buried the remaining Guardians on isolated shelter worlds. With the firing of the Halo ring in 97,445 BCE, the Guardians were left behind when the remaining Forerunners left the galaxy. The constructs would remain dormant on their shelter worlds until called upon to serve for the mantle once again. Now, this gives you a bit of insight as to why Cortana is using the Guardians, and that is to, of course, serve the mantle, which is apparently to do with the AI uprising. The Guardians were classified as Tier 2 peacemakers, specifically purposed for the security, protection and enforcement roles within the Ecumene. While efficient protectors and enforcers, Guardians also served as immaculate record keepers, adding the history of those under their protection to the domain's archives. The mantle of responsibility, the philosophical system adhered to by the Forerunners, was based around the belief that the most technological developed species was charged with the stewardship of life throughout the Milky Way galaxy. As such, the Forerunners considered themselves as the mantle's upholders. However, as part of the mantle's code, competition and conflict was allowed as long as it didn't threaten the galactic biodiversity. As such entities proved to be a threat to the Forerunners' hold of the mantle, the Guardians were designed to police the so-called lesser planetary systems and enforce the mantle's edict on non-compliant or overly aggressive species. Guardians were utilised throughout the Forerunners' history to suppress rebellions or were deployed in advance as an imposing threat or force. However, they ultimately proved useless against the parasitic Flood. Guardians were designed with multiple roles and functions. Throughout their primary purpose was the monitoring and the subjugation of all local power networks on subject worlds. If deemed necessary, Guardians could instantaneously neutralize these power networks through a series of debilitating pulses that incrementally increased in power. A single Guardian was often enough to effectively police an entire planetary system, though the deployment of multiple Guardians at one location allowed the construct to strategically coordinate their strike, rendering all but the most sophisticated foes completely inactive. This method was largely unchallenged by other species in the galaxy. So now we have a little bit of history behind the Guardian and why they were used and how they actually came to be. But let's talk about some theories on how the Guardian had crash landed onto Zeta Halo. As mentioned in our recap, Cortana summoned and used the Guardians as a way to enforce her plan for humanity's AIs to take forward the mantle of responsibility. There were multiple instances where the Guardians would be summoned, such as Doisak being one of them, which we see in the campaign whereby 7 Guardians were summoned by Cortana to destroy the Brute homeworld as a punishment for Atriox and the Banished for not joining the created uprising. There was also an instance on Reach, where Escharum and the Keepers of One Freedom went to save Atriox from the portal from the Ark to the portal on Reach. Reach. The Guardian was sent to Reach when a slipspace portal was opened in order to investigate what it could be. And of course, not to mention, Cortana also summoned one at the end of Halo 5, which I'm sure we've all seen by now. Well, I do feel like this exact question will be the plot of Halo Infinite's DLC, which will then go on to lead onto the Endless. Cortana has access to the Forerunner domain, and she had done this in Halo 4. In Halo 5, Cortana thought that the mantle was not just passed down from the Forerunners to humanity, but actually to humanity's AIs, and that's been her motivation ever since. The Forerunner domain will have access to everything Forerunner, obviously, including their secrets and anything that they might not want people to know, or anything historical to do with the Forerunners. The Endless would have been mentioned within the domain somewhere, where they're imprisoned, why, and what the Forerunners' lies really were. The domain was an immaterial reserve of knowledge and collective experience viewed by the Forerunners as the essence of living expression of their culture and history. In addition to the ancestral impressions and memories contained within, information could also be stored and retrieved from the domain for practical purposes. There was a mysterious quality to the domain. Despite its ubiquity in Forerunner culture, its exact nature of origin remained largely nebulous to the Forerunners. Due to these abstruse aspects, the Forerunners treated the domain as something mystical and transcendent. It was regarded with reverence and connected to the Forerunners' religious beliefs. Picture Cortana like a virus of some sort, or even a hive mind. She's deep within the domain and will continuously keep ingesting more and more information and knowledge the domain is feeding her. And bearing in mind, this is one of the things that the smart AIs will always have weakness to. Whenever they get more and more information, they just want to keep diving into that rabbit hole, going into different parts of the domain and ingesting as much knowledge as possible. This is like a drug to them, and this is potentially how Cortana found out about the Endless when within the domain. She was trying to ingest so much knowledge and information from the domain that she came across it. That one strand of data which contained information around the Endless. She then digs deeper into that strand of data and finds out more and more details, such as their purpose, their location, and the Forerunners' reasons for imprisoning them. Within this strand of data, Cortana would have found out why the Forerunners had killed off the Precursors back in the day, and found out about a similar fate the Precursors inflicted upon them. This is when she would realise that the mantle actually didn't belong to humanity in the first place, and that the rightful holders of the mantle from now should in fact be the Endless, as they were the remnants of the Precursors, and the Forerunners were never actually the rightful holders of the mantle. What if Cortana went to Zeta Halo trying to find and free the Endless in order for her to reason with her about the mantle? What if Cortana wanted to enlist the Endless into the created army? Similar to what we think's happening with Atriox and the Banished. They know something that we don't, let's put it that way. They know what the Endless are capable of and why they were imprisoned, and this could be the reason why that they want to enlist them so bad. If this is true, let's put it into perspective. As we've just said, the biggest mystery in question to us right now is why were the Endless imprisoned, and for two factions such as Cortana and Atriox to want the Endless or to enlist them to their army, there must be something that they know that we don't as to why they want them to join them, essentially. I'm sure this will get fleshed out in DLC 1, but it is interesting if this theory is correct that we could be in some really interesting information when DLC 1 does drop. In an attempt to threaten the Endless or give them no choice, I think that Cortana had the Guardian on standby, and once she found the location of the Endless, she would use it against them to essentially threaten them and make them join the created army. This is when the cutscene with Despondent Pyre takes place, where Cortana is trying to look for the Endless and Despondent Pyre is wondering how she knows. Which goes back to my previous point, and it's due to Cortana having access to the Forerunner domain. The Banished were already on the ring at this point and plotted their attack on the UNSC Infinity. I think that Cortana actually knew about the attack and summoned her Guardian early to put a stop to it. However, once the Chief implanted the weapon onto Zeta Halo, Cortana was locked down and was powerless, resulting in the Guardian to fall and crash land on the ring, as it didn't have anything or anyone to control it or provide it with a plan of action. Therefore, it deactivated and now lays dormant on Zeta Halo. Or it could just be as simple as the Guardian was already there before anyone had turned up. I don't think anyone's actually thought of that. As we mentioned in our recap, the Forerunners placed a lot of these Guardians back in the day, around the time of the Flood Forerunner War, on shield worlds and essentially left them there to lay dormant. What if somehow one of those dormant Guardians were teleported or slip-spaced onto Zeta Halo, or what if that was one of the locations at the start? The majority of them were left on shield worlds, but this one was on Zeta Halo for whatever reason. Again, we don't know, but it's something to take into account because it could be possible at this point without knowing the full details. And even to put this point even further, to prove that this could be the case, the picture that we have about it is that the Guardian is literally buried under a mountain. This could be maybe that the ring was 1, maybe rebuilding itself and built over the Guardian, or 2, that it's that old that nature has literally formed over this Guardian, causing it to be literally within a mountain. So again, we don't know at this point, everything is complete speculation, but that's my point, and that's where I do think that potentially happened to the Guardian. It would make sense, because if that is the case, then we don't know what happened from the point where the Chief went down to the ring and the point where Cortana was locked down. We haven't got that information, we haven't got that in audio logs, we don't have any cutscenes or anything like that. That bit is completely a mystery to us at this point. And that would also make sense why a lot of people didn't actually see the Guardian, because 1, they were so busy evacuating and trying not to die, and 2, the Guardian could have just crash landed and nobody really would have paid attention, because they're all trying to get off the USS Infinity at the time, or the Banished are literally trying to capture the weapon or take down the Infinity. So maybe not a lot of attention was supplied on the Guardian at the start. And again, there are cracks and holes in this theory, and yes, why would nobody see the Guardian? If one person did see it, then potentially they would have said something or something like that. Again, I get it, I understand, but I just can't see how a Guardian would fit in this story at all. That's the only thing that I can think of, is Cortana again summoning the Guardian, and as she was locked down, that's when the Guardian crash landed onto the ring. Unless it was there prior, which could be the case. There could be a very good reason for it, but we don't know, so we'll have to wait for DLC 1. Overall, I think this Guardian will play a big part in DLC 1. If it wasn't meant to be canon, it wouldn't be there, and that's my way of looking at it. I feel this Guardian will serve a greater purpose in DLC 1 or even DLC 2, and we will understand more about where it came from, and even if it can be summoned again. You never know. The Endless could have the power to summon the Guardians. And if the Endless and the Flood work together and they're immune to the Guardian's blast, that could be one of the reasons or one of the ways that they take over Zeta Halo, or even that part of the universe. But guys, let me know your thoughts and opinions down below. I'm very excited for DLC 1, I really can't wait for it, and I can't wait to see where 343 take it, to be honest. But guys, make sure you leave a like down below as well. Subscribe if you are brand new to the channel for more content coming each and every single day. Make sure you guys have a good rest of your day, take care, and speak to you all soon.